Hello, with the Oscars coming up, I wanted to talk about the very first Oscars in, gosh, what was it? It was in the 20s. So, the very first Oscars, it's a very cool time capsule of that period between sound and silent films. So, you've kind of got a smattering of the first few films that started using not dialogue but a kind of a soundtrack, so like the atmosphere. But anyway, it's a really nice little time capsule. Okay, now the previous version. So I've done a little let's discuss the Oscars before, and that one basically even though like every social media I put it on, it was basically neck and neck. I think the feeling I got from the audience, from all of you out there, is that it was indeed Gloria Swanson was robbed of the 1951's Best Actress Oscar race. Now, before we go into the very first Oscars, I think we need to look at the history. So, what's the context of this? Now, while the Hays Code hadn't come in yet, there was rumblings around, and there was so the people who came together to make the Academy were people like Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, and Louis B. Mayer, and the idea was to combat this sort of Nickelodeon kind of feeling in the public that motion pictures were just a flash in the pan. That the fad would soon die out, and they wanted to show to the world that this was artistic. Like there was this sort of feeling like, yeah, okay, it's kind of like a circus sideshow. It's vulgar, like it's amoral. It's and this would bubble up into the Hays Code, which would sort of start to come in the mid 30s, but we're not quite yet there yet. And I think so. All of this, I should say, is coming from this wonderful book called Oscar Wars, and the first chapter is dedicated to this. So I'm just giving you a quick overview of that. So that's the background to sort of think of, like, why maybe the person who was chosen to win won. But let's go through the films. I'm nearly 100 years removed from this race. And so I recently got a chance to watch on YouTube the Sadie Thompson film. Now, Sadie Thompson has been made a few times. It was almost made by Marilyn Monroe. It's been made by Rita Hayworth. It's been made by Gloria Swanson twice. And it was initially... Oh, and it was made by Joan Crawford as the film Rain. And I want to say, like, the way this became famous was on Broadway, by a writer who happened to be like me, a gay, playwright, although I'm not a playwright. So that, for me, that's quite interesting. It was his most famous play, based on a short story by, I think it's W. Somerset, and I've forgotten his last name. Trying to prove this is not AI, it's not pre-recorded, it's not pre-written. Okay, these are just my thoughts. Okay, now, it was, so the person who made this role famous is a woman called Jean Eagles, and I am planning to do something on Jean Eagles' career. She was nominated for Best Actress in I believe the second Academy Awards, and not the first Academy Awards. Anyway, so let's take a look at Sadie Thompson. Now, the thing is, I'm not watching it at the time, and while Sadie Thompson was a film that I believe was preserved in Mary Pickford's in her vault. There was some damage to the key scene. So the version that I'm watching and the version that likely the people who are watching me will have watched is the version where the key scene is just a series of photographs, and they still tell a story. Okay, so let's cut to the chase. What's the story of Sadie Thompson? So she is a woman and a streetwalker, perhaps. Not the first nominated role of a streetwalker in this Oscar race. And she is on her way to another country, and she stops over in this small island. And because of the rain, she's trapped. And she's trapped in this hotel with a extremely religious priest and his wife and their cohort. So it becomes this real battle of, the flapper age, the kind of amoral do anything, and then you've got this religious cohort. And so it's led by the great Lionel Barrymore, and he is fantastic. And Gloria Swanson, it is all about Gloria Swanson. Now, did she base her performance on Gene Eagle's version? I don't know, but she, because I have seen an earlier piece of Gloria Swanson's called Male and Female, and it doesn't really suggest that she's going to become this great actress, but Sadie Thompson definitely does. So to maybe spoil it a little bit, she does go through this kind of arc of where to survive this religious group, she has a real moment where she repents and she transforms, and then in this key scene, even though she's stripped herself of all this sort of flapper extravagance, and she's met this guy and they're going to go away together to Australia, this priest forces himself on her, and this is the scene that is lost to time, but we do get little images of it. And then after this scene, she gives up her religious transformation and keeps on into her life, and her performance. Before I talk about why maybe it didn't win, I'm just going to say straight up, this is the film that now, I haven't watched all the films yet. I've only watched 2 films in the race so far. But so far, bit of a spoiler, I think this is the film that should have won. I think Gloria Swanson should have won for this role, and I think that if it wasn't the first Oscars, she would have won. Now, yeah, and it is just a tour de force. It's all about Gloria Swanson, and she comes in with the artifice that you see in sort of this male and female role, the Cecil B. DeMille film, and then when it's all stripped down, it's a little bit of a performance like a similar one would be from a couple of years later, Scarlet Express with a beautiful performance by Marlene Dietrich's incredible performance. But yeah, this is a work of art. Like, this is, yeah. But I think the reason why the voters, I mean, we all talk about Oscars being fixed. But the first Oscars was, I'm going to say, definitely fixed, because they wanted to show themselves in a certain way. And I think the actress who personified how they wanted to be perceived by the public is the one who ended up winning. Okay, so let's keep going to the second film I've watched so far, and that is a film called Sunrise. Now, in a normal Oscar year, it wouldn't qualify, but this was the very first Oscars. And let's say, so remember that, so this is like 27, and I think the first Oscars were for the 29 season, but films were often played for much longer, like they had more of a roadshow run. And yeah, this is the film. Now, technically this won for Janet Gaynor, but she won for 3 films, and I am going to endeavour to watch the other 2 films before finally talking about why she might have won. But let's talk first about Sunrise. And I've reviewed Sunrise on my as a short before, but I'll try and talk about it in a little bit more depth. But as I said in the short, it's very hard to describe the experience of watching Sunrise by talking about the plot. The plot is incredibly simple. Like, if you think of it, like the 2 lead characters are very archetypical. Like, the genius of the film is the way it's made. But anyway, so Janet Gaynor and this very handsome man who his name is lost to me at present, they play a husband and wife who are farmers, and the husband is having an affair with a flapper, you know, a kind of Gloria Swanson type. So, and the flapper kind of encourages him to murder his wife so they can run away to the city. And in a scene which I'm going to say it echoes because I saw it first, but A Place in the Sun, where Montgomery Clift is taking poor Shelley Winters out into the lake and is planning to get rid of her. But in Sunrise, she manages to convince him that she really loves him, and they actually run off to the city together, and they have like they kind of renew their vows, and they have a second honeymoon. And all of this to say is, like, I by telling you about the plot, I can't convince you about the actual experience of watching this film. Like there is a reason why the Academy awarded this as Best Film. Now, okay, officially Best Film is to Wings in the first Oscars, but there was a category all created unto itself of Best Artistic Achievement in Film, and this went to Sunrise. And there is a very, very good reason why it won that. The experience of watching Sunrise is overwhelming. So, like, the publicity was like, you will, like, a little bit like Superman, like, you'll believe a man can fly, like, you'll believe a camera can fly. And what they do in this film is, like, as a filmmaker watching it, it's just like a staggering achievement of how did they do that in the late 20s. Like now we've got these very light cameras, we can move them about, but like you will believe that a camera can fly because it's just flying through all these scenes. It is a staggering artistic achievement, and the thing that I can maybe relate it to is, like, I went to Uluru Ayers Rock last year in September, and it's a very similar experience where, like, okay, so like the plot of Sunrise would be like describing Uluru as a rock in the middle of the desert. Like, okay, it's a big rock, it's in the middle of the desert. Like, why do I want to see this? But when you actually go to Ayers Rock, the experience of it is just, it is one of the most special experiences of my life. Just, it is an incredibly spiritual place. And that is what Sunrise is like. It is this very spiritual experience. And I think, I think they called it Fox Sound or something like that, Fox Film. It is one of the first films that utilizes this kind of Foley soundtrack. It is without dialogue, so it is a semi-silent film, and it's like experiencing a dream. Like, it's that very kind of Lynchian feel of, like, when you're watching it, it is like watching a dream, and it's very, very universal. Like, there's, even though like nearly 100 years separates us and the film, it's like 2025, and this is from 1925. The one thing that I think would be weird for modern audiences is that Janet Gaynor, the way she's done up, it makes her look about 12 years old, which is very disconcerting. Like, so the flapper woman, who is like a Joan Crawford type, but not Joan Crawford, she's very womanly, and the man is very handsome, with his raven floppy hair, and like, even though he's a farmer, like, he's very handsome when he's a farmer, and then when they kind of clean him up at the barber's, it becomes even more handsome, like, but yeah, there's something a bit disconcerting about how young Janet Gaynor looks. But aside from all of that, I think perhaps they had done that to emphasize the purity of Janet Gaynor's character as the wife. Like, they don't have names. It's just man, woman, mistress, I guess. City woman. But so, see, I'm getting very emotional talking about this film because it's a masterpiece. But, like 2001 is a masterpiece, I can see why no one got, well, maybe, okay, with 2001, maybe the person who played Hal may have gotten a Best Supporting Academy Award nomination. A Best Supporting Academy Award nomination, but no one's really winning an Academy Award for their acting in 2001. My fridge decided to say something. It agrees with me. It's maybe I should make a film around one of these videos about Hal, because my fridge is talking now that Hal has been talking. Okay, but anyway, back to Sunrise. I could maybe see, maybe the husband getting, there is a bit of acting to his role. Janet Gaynor, I guess the scene where she's convincing him not to kill her, there is some acting in that, but it is nowhere in the same league as Gloria Swanson's performance. So just purely as, because this is the Best Actress award, purely as an acting performance, Janet Gaynor, you know, I don't even know why she was nominated for this role. But, you know, looking back, why? Because the first Academy Awards were set up to showcase how artistic, you know, this is an art form. This is not just some sideshow flash in the pan. Like, they wanted to show we are an art form. And there really is no better film than Sunrise to showcase to the world we are an art form, rather than just, you know, a bit of sideshow vaudeville, you know, rah, 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 clang, clang, clang goes the clang, you know, that it's not that. So there is a reason why Sunrise is there, and that's why they're pushing it. But I do believe Sunrise won the award it deserved, which is for Best Achievement in Artistic Film. However, looking back nearly 100 years later, it's hard to justify Janet Gaynor getting an Academy Award nomination for this role. But okay, I better stop here. I'll be wearing different clothes the next time I do this. So I'm going to watch the other films that were nominated. So this is maybe, should this be part one? I don't know, because there's 3 more films to watch, with 2 of them being a Janet Gaynor film, and there's another one which I've saved on YouTube, and because it's also available. All of these films are available on YouTube. Maybe this is nearly 22 minutes. This probably should be a part 1. Let's discuss the first Academy Awards. And with that, okay, I think this is going to be a part 1. I'll upload it and I'll start watching the other films. So it may take me a little while to get to them, but I'll try to get to them before the latest Academy Awards. So, so basically, the thesis of this before the first, the second part, the fix is in. Like, from the very first Academy Awards to now, the fix is in. Like, the Academy Awards have always been political. It's always been about sending a message. Although I think in the early days it was a lot more, especially for us as an audience, there was a lot more of like, these are our best achievements this year. And it gave us, a way of discovering some great films. And of the 2 films I've watched so far, Sadie Thompson and Sunrise, both of them are classics. Obviously, Sadie Thompson is much more of a drama, and Sunrise is this dreamlike artistic achievement. Okay, what do you think? Have you watched them? If you haven't, I'll try and put some links to watch the films on YouTube. They're staggering achievements. Please go and check them out. Until part 2.